I just want to point out 5 quick errors in prosperity preaching so that those who are more studied in the Bible are able to confront those who are bringing the false teachings into their churches. And so in order to help those who have studied the word and understand that who recognize prosperity preaching is false, here 5 errors they make. This is from somebody else's list, but it's a wonderful short list. Number 1, they see the Abrahamic covenant as a means to material entitlement. God said he's going to do this for Abraham and his descendants. I'm one of his descendants, therefore I get everything he offered Abraham. Number 2, they say that Jesus' atonement on the cross extends to the sin of material poverty. If you can imagine, they actually are teaching that to have poverty, to be poor, is a sin. Jesus in the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, said, blessed. He didn't say, God hates the poor. Number 3, third error, Christians give in order to gain material compensation from God. That is, you'll hear them say on the prosperity preachers on TV say, if you send in $100, God will give you back a 10 or 100-fold of that. That's not what the Bible teaches. God's not a banker. A pop singer who's a Christian said, I believe in a God who's not short on cash. It's a simple way to say it, but it's absolutely true. God doesn't need our money. The local churches need money in order to maintain their keep the lights on and everything else. We need to give to build the church, but all our giving should be given under the purpose of building the church, not under the purpose of seeing how much we can get back. Number 4, faith for them is a self-generated spiritual force that leads to prosperity. That is, they teach that faith is a force that you use to create wealth for yourself. Well, that has much, much more to do with Hinduism and New Thought than Christianity by far. That is the bringing in of foreign religious elements into the Christian gospel. And number 5, they say prayer is a tool that forces God to grant prosperity. If you pray hard enough for what you want, if you say it the right way and repeat it enough times, you force God to do something for you. That's got the whole system backwards. God doesn't live to serve us. We live to serve him. And Edward was talking about the some of the heresies that have come into the church and some of the false doctrines. For me, one of the most obvious and destructive for among mainline Christians these days is that they've completely turned their back on the doctrine of God that all the reformers advocated for. It goes under the term divine simplicity, and that's a whole different can of worms to open up. But basically, by making since in the last couple of 100 years, almost every church has tried to make God more approachable and more relatable and more like us. And what they've done is they've brought God down to our level. And he's no longer the God of the Bible, so that when the atheists mock this, it's just they say flying spaghetti monster or some other creation is just as likely as the Christian God. Well, the God that many Christians believe in is as likely as the flying spaghetti monster, because they don't believe in a transcendent, timeless, eternal, unchanging God. If you believe in a God who changes his mind constantly and who gets mad at, angry all the time and such, then you're believing in a God that's not true to his word and not trustworthy to follow through. So what we need to understand is God is so much more than anything that we can conceive in our mind. Whatever we can conceive in our mind as God, he's beyond that. So I think that the biggest doctrinal error I've seen in the churches in the last couple of 100 years is the reduction of God to our level. God did condescend to come among us in the person of Christ, but God's nature didn't change. And so I think the simplification of God has been an awful mistake.